Sri Lankan President to preside over the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting that will commence tomorrow.
Should 5 persons, including Gotabaya Rajapaksa, be held accountable over the Lanka issue, Presidential Commission requests for reasons in writing.
MP Sunil Handunethi appointed chair of COPE.
Issues surrounding water raised during the budget debate.
Gas from the Manna Basin to be used to generate electricity for 25 years.
Turkey releases audio of warning to down Russia jet.
Good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News with me, Joel Outsgoon. Good evening.
Good evening, Joel. And I'm Arundhati Mudannayak. Let's take a look at your top story this evening.
President Maithripala Sirisena reached Malta this evening to attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
The 24th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will commence tomorrow and will end on the 29th.
President Maithripala Sirisena left the island early this morning to attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
ලෝක ජනගහනයෙන් 4/1.
A quarter of the world population, that is 1.1 billion, represent the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will officially open tomorrow. The theme for CHOGM Malta 2015 is the Commonwealth adding global value. The French President and the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will attend as special invitees. The Queen is to reach Malta today. Current chair of the Commonwealth, President Maithripala Sirisena, reached Malta this evening. The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will take place at the Mediterranean Conference Centre and Fort St. Angelo in Vitoriosa.
මහා සමුළුව පැවැත්වීමට නිමිතයි.
President Maithripala Sirisena is due to hand over the position of the chair to the Prime Minister of Malta tomorrow. The pre-CHOGM Malta 2015 Foreign Ministers meeting and economic conference took place today. Ministers Mangala Samaravira and Sagal Ratnayaka represented Sri Lanka at these meetings.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry today informed attorneys at law representing 5 persons, including former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to submit reasons in writing as to why their clients should not be named as responsible persons with regard to the Lakna issue before the 2nd of December.
Now, this order is applicable for former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, former Navy Commanders Jayantha Perera and Janat Kolambage, former Additional Secretary to the Ministry of Defence Damayanti Jayaratne, and Chairman of Avantgardes Security Services Private Limited, Nisanka Senadipati.
Secretary to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to investigate into acts of large-scale corruption and fraud, Lassell De Silva, said that this was informed to the parties when they appeared before the Commission today, subsequent to notice being issued over incidents where employees of Lanka were allegedly used for campaigning activities in the run-up to the presidential election, and where weapons belonging to Lanka were allegedly provided to Avantgarde Maritime Security Services Private Limited. Attorneys at law representing the 5 persons stated that their clients were not responsible for the said charges and should not be named as relevant parties in these incidents. At instances where weapons had to be provided and where the Ministry of Defence had to grant approval for various purposes, I carried out those tasks in a legal manner. I did this with my honest intentions to render a service to the country, attract foreign investment, and to fulfill our responsibility to the international community as a member state of the United Nations. If you look into my income and expenditure, you can ascertain if I have made any earnings out of them. But I believe that what is being done here is a waste of public funds. Secretary to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, Lassell De Silva, said that these 5 persons will be summoned to the Commission once again next month.
The employment-deprived personnel of Avantgarde Maritime Security Services Private Limited convened a media briefing today. They conducted investigations for 11 months, saying that there is an issue with the Mahanora vessel. Every possible institution which has the provisions of the law to conduct investigations in Sri Lanka got involved in this. Before we initiated this floating armoury in Galle, there were several other floating armouries in Galle before. We have proof for this. Sri Lanka had no authorization of these floating armouries. These floating armouries had come in from foreign countries and were anchored way off the seas of Galle and were functioning secretively. So we asked those who took over this what their justification is, and if they give us a justifiable answer, then we as law-abiding soldiers will also accept them.
විශ්‍රාමිකෝ රණවීරෝ හැටියට අපිව පිළිගන්නත් සූදානම්. මේ අවන්ගාඩ් සමාගමට
Avantgardes' highest source of income was from the Mahanora floating armory. These retired soldiers who tried to live the comfort of their retirement are now left on the streets. Firepower and wealth cannot be merged as one, because if they do, there will be grave destruction.
Chairman for the Committee on Public Enterprises and Public Account Committee were appointed today.
Deputy Secretary-General of Parliament Neil Iddawala said that JVP MP Sunil Handunethi was chosen as the chairman of the COP, while the Public Account Committee will be headed by MP Lasantha Alagiyawanna. The two chairmen were elected when both committees convened today. 21 members each were appointed to COP and the PSE today.
Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake today made a special announcement in Parliament today regarding the zero-budget basing policy. A zero-budget basing program has been introduced for the year 2016. What is expected from it is the proper management of state property. Through this, we hope to control the funds to obtain proper value for the money we spend, avoid the allocation of funds for the same project twice. 3. To minimize the wastage. 4. To not bear uneconomical cost. The second phase will commence in January 2016. The state valuers have already taken steps to begin assessing the value of the wealth of the government.
But the issue here is that since the inception of the free education system, all the governments have allocated capital expenditure and have accumulated property. At the end, the value of these properties stand at 121 billion rupees. It is wrong to account this 121 billion rupees as funds that have been allocated for education by the 2016 budget.
We have accounted that amount, but that is unnecessary. But if you subtract that amount, it is reduced to 5.01. There is no issue.
Irrelevant of whose government is in power, you cannot achieve that value 6% as a realistic surface value without a major increase in the total revenue of the country.
I will give one. අපිට මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ එනං ඉතින් මේකේ තේරුමක් නැහැ නේ මේ විවාදේ කළා ගරු කතානායකතු එනම කෝටි 1200 දැන් ටීවී එකට කතා කරුවා ඇති දැන් අපි තාත්තා හිටපු අධ්‍යාපන ඇමතුමා මේ වැරදි.
The former Minister of Education is making a false statement. He is hoping that we would not achieve the 6% target. He kept on reducing this those days.
The amendments proposed to the appropriation bill was passed in Parliament today. 35 votes were cast in favour while 3 votes were cast against it.
Now, during the second reading of the budget, Minister Sajid Premadasa raised an issue surrounding the supply of water.
I issue this challenge to the creators of the miracle of Hambantota, who are seated in the opposition. Instead of consuming water from the bottle that is provided in Parliament, I challenge you to drink this water that is used daily by over 40,000 people living in Tisamaharama. That will be the biggest miracle. Tisamaharama gets impure water while the Parliament, the Cabinet and the President's Palace gets pure labelled water. This is the destruction that has taken place to our country. Without any hesitation, the government of good governance has allocated millions and millions of rupees to provide pipe water to the people who did not receive water from the Hambantota miracle. The economic policy of this unity government is also loans, fines and taxes. This is the same policy that the Rajapaksa administration followed. There is no difference in this. If you are introducing an economy to us that is dependent of loans, fines and taxes, and if we cannot reach the benchmark of providing goods and services, our country will see an economic destruction. Even if we have a consensual government or a singular government, if we do not align the economy with the global economy, we cannot move forward. What we aspire is for a strong economy to take this country forward in the next 2 years. We need to work together in this. What we need to do is not sell off the state property, but to find means of increasing their revenue. We need revenue. The UNP wants to and aspires to make Sri Lanka a country that will supply financial services globally. Therefore, this daydream may become the people's nightmare. With the current level of opposition raised against the government, they will not be able to move ahead. I do not know what point he likes in this budget. Every word that he speaks is aimed at spreading revenge, hatred and jealousy. They speak of destruction. The people of this country who do not even own a piece of land have been waiting for years for ownership. A person with the wise mind will not oppose it.
Recently, the Ministry of Education highlighted that replacing the process of providing material for school uniforms for the students with cash vouchers will not allow for waste, fraud and corruption, added that a higher amount of money can be allocated for the students. On the 18th of November, the minister presented a cabinet paper to the Cabinet of Ministers for approval. This proposal was approved by the Cabinet. The Minister of Education took up his post in January this year. Earlier, Action TV exposed that since January, the minister had presented a number of cabinet papers until the month of November and obtained cabinet approval for the provision of material for school uniforms and not for the issuing of vouchers. However, on the 4th of December, 4.3 million school students are to be given vouchers instead of material for school uniforms. Another program is being undermined with this voucher process coming into the fore. This is the process of issuing an additional uniform for the students in rural areas in the mid of every year, a program that was scheduled to commence this year. Material for this program is being purchased under the allocations made in the budget for the purchasing of uniform material for the year 2015. 700,000 additional school uniforms are handed over to the Ministry of Education by the respective suppliers during the period from February to March this year. However, these 700,000 school uniforms that were to be distributed in June continue to be placed at a storage facility in Orugudavatta that was rented by the Ministry of Education.
Because of the low quality material provided by the suppliers, they have been simply stored in a facility in Orugudavatta. They have been punished. Their funds were not released. We did not allow them to resupply. That is why we are introducing this. I too am a lawyer. Decisions can be made according to the provisions of the law. We cannot drag anyone by the collar and say you did this wrong.
According to the conditions mentioned in the fund allocation, the Ministry of Education had accepted these material following the quality test carried out by the Sri Lanka Institute for Textile and Apparel. It is said that 2,300 million rupees was spent for the purchasing of uniform material for last year, and that included the money spent for these 700,000 additional school uniforms. Although the ministers raised concerns that the quality was not up to par, the quality reports that claim that this fact have not been given to the suppliers even to date. If these material are not of the required quality standards, why aren't better quality material being obtained by presenting the reports to the respective suppliers? The process of issuing vouchers will not meet the provision of the additional school uniforms for students in the rural areas. Therefore, what process will be introduced to replace this program? Secretary to the Ministry of Education, this is over to you.
Taking a look at more local stories, a media briefing was convened in Parliament to elaborate on the process of releasing political prisoners on bail.
Speaking to reporters, the Minister of Justice said that 59 inmates with no serious charges against them have been identified and 39 of them have already been released. This is not the first time that such a process has been followed. Days before the 2010 presidential election, the then Attorney General Mohan Piris had released 140 persons on bail. 12,000 armed personnel were arrested by the government, rehabilitated and released back to the society. 390 persons were released by the Aegis Department in February and August 2012 before the Northern Provincial Council polls. A majority of them has serious charges filed against them. The report on that has not been submitted by the Aegis Department. 3 persons were arrested based on the evidence of the attempted murder of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. One of them was a suicide bomber named Sivaraj Subhakrishnan. All 3 of them were released by the previous government. We are releasing them now in order to build national reconciliation. As a government, we are acting with responsibility with the complete understanding on national security. A demonstration demanding the release of political prisoners took place at the premises of the University of Jaffna this afternoon. The government of good governance promises to release these inmates, but now they are speaking of rehabilitation. This is a confusing situation. A media briefing was convened today to elaborate on the process of the oil and natural gas project in the Mana Basin.
මේ මොහොත වන විට ඛනිජ තෙල් link.
So far, we have carried out seismic surveys on 4 wells. Seismic surveys have proved that 2 wells contain the deposits. We have the data. We hope to commence the next round of bidding in January or February. Leading companies have focused their attention on the blocks for oil and gas exploration. Lanka Oil is a French company. We are planning to carry out a joint study with that company.
අධ්‍යයනයක් සඳහා ගිවිසුම් ගත වීමට සූදානම්ින් ඉන්නේ. Well, tentatively, approximately, we have in one well to run a 600 megawatt plant for 25 years.
Casting aside oil, we believe that we will commence extracting gas in the next 5 to 6 years.
The first Gender Focal Point conference hosted by the Colombo Plan Gender Affairs Programme commenced today.
Share knowledge. The conference is being held with the participation of 36 senior government delegates from 20 member countries out of the 27 member countries of the Colombo Plan.
Our national machinery has launched series of programs to increase women's participation in politics, and our government is making a conscious effort to give increased representation to women. However, there are still gender-based inequalities that persist even with more women in education compared to men.
Meanwhile, an event to launch 16 days of activism against gender-based violence campaign organised by the Forum Against Gender-Based Violence was also held in Colombo today.
Many children and women are silent victims today for domestic violence, sexual abuse, sexual harassment that takes place in these different spheres. The scars of gender-based violence remain for life and may impair a person's ability to live a normal life if it's not addressed. The ministry has commenced several programs that seeks to reduce these gaps and address these problems. Violence, sexual
කාන්තායිතින් සුරකිමු. කාන්තාව සපි බලගන්වමු. එන්න අප සමග එක්වන්න.
An event was held to award appointment letters to new doctors yesterday. The event was held at the BMICH in Colombo.
1,218 doctors were awarded internship letters and were enrolled to the health service.
Now our main challenge is the non-communicable diseases. You must understand that 65% of the patients who die in hospital is due to non-communicable diseases. A country, a small island like Sri Lanka, to face this agony is not that easy. According to Dr. Avantgardes, it's like a mafia. You know, in the world, the number one mafia is the arms. Second is the pharmaceuticals. So that is why we are very happy that we introduced a drug regulatory policy in this country. For the first time this year, with this good governance government. So with that drug policy, we are going to actually do a lot of things, revolutionize the drug policy in this country.
Over the weekend, Newsfirst reported on the deforestation taking place in the induction zone of the Singharaja rainforest, making way for the construction of a minor hydropower plant.
Following the Newsfirst expose, the chairman of the Central Environmental Authority had instructed officials to immediately conduct a probe and submit a report.
Newsfirst commenced its journey from the Radhagalar to reach the location where the Kosgulana River is being dammed in the induction zone of the Singharaja forest for the construction of a hydropower plant. The Singharaja forest is Sri Lanka's largest tropical rainforest. Because of its international significance, it has been designated a biosphere reserve and World Heritage Site by UNESCO. The impact caused by the environment by the construction could be seen en route to the site of the construction. Heavy machines move on this road 7 or 8 times a day. We have no way of going to school because of the muddy road. Cars and three-wheelers used this road before because it was in good condition. But after the project commenced, the road had reached an inferior state.
The road has to be renovated daily. The road is in ruins.
As the condition of the road was not in favour for vehicles to travel on, Newsfirst also had to set off on foot on a kilometre stretch of the road to reach the construction site. The project director presented the permits to the officers from the CEA.
When we are giving a land, we inquire from the forest department as to whether they own this forest land. They have clearly mentioned that this land does not come under the Singharaja forest or any other reserve. I inquired from them yesterday as well.
However, the margins drawn by UNESCO highlighting Singharaja as a World Heritage and other maps clearly show that the Kosgulana River and the Kodava area come under the limits of the buffer zone of the Singharaja tropical rainforest. Another issue was the boundary wall of the turbines for the power plant have been constructed on the banks of the river. If this is to be called a forest reserve, the respective institution must make the notification through a gazette. According to the documents that we have, there is no such indication. However, environmentalists refuse to accept this.
In an exclusive interview with News First, Brandon Zoner, who is the Senior Vice President of 20th Century Fox Television Distribution for the Asia-Pacific region, spoke of the new opportunities in movie productions that Sri Lanka has at hand.
Advice for countries like Sri Lanka, I mean, there's an opportunity to perhaps avoid some of the negative learnings of other countries that they've gone through, as their media business is evolving, and really adopt the final outcome, and so you can bypass a lot of the, the negative lessons that can be learned. So I think, in Sri Lanka, I believe recently the tariffs have been dropped on, English language shows. I think there's a good opportunity in local production. We're seeing a boom around the region in producing local versions of American shows. So I think that's somewhere or something that Sri Lanka could probably look at.
Former Secretary of Sri Lanka Cricket Nishantha Ranatunga handed over his nominations to contest the SLC elections.
Director General of Sports KDS Ruwan Chandra said that 3 nominations were received today for the SLC elections.
The SLC elections are scheduled to take place on the 3rd of January and the deadline for submitting nominations is the 4th of next month.
Former SLC Secretary Nishantha Ranatunga, former Deputy Secretary of SLC Hirantha Pereira and Nilantha Ratnayaka handed over their nominations today. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Prime Time News. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka.
I'm Joel Outskun. Good night. Take care.